So while I was playing, it nearly became a life and death situation. It came to a point when I was playing like selection matches, playing field, and I used to just think of killing myself. In worst case scenarios have also occurred where I've actually tried to take scissors or a knife to try to mutilate myself. During the 2023 IDL season, that's when I came out to my parents, saying that I'm trans woman and I want to transition. We made trans women basically won't get periods. Okay, but besides cramps and feeding, whatever else there is, like let's say breast development, skin softening, the hair things out on your body, it all happens. It all happens from this. While I was socially transitioning in the UK, I had given up hope on cricket because I knew that if I were to transition, cricket is gone for me.
Hello and welcome to The Print. Today we have a very special guest with us here in Mumbai, cricketer and social media influencer Anaya Bagar, who is navigating her life as a trans athlete. Anaya, welcome to our channel. How are you?
I'm good, I've been great.
Anaya, you have had quite a journey, especially over the last few years. Could you tell us about what did you went through before accepting your identity, while anticipating that how will it come out? Once you make it public, what all did you go through?
To be honest, I would say that there was a lot of internalized homophobia and transphobia at the very beginning, which led me to ignore all these feelings for transitioning. And I went through with that for a really long time, but there came a point where I was just wasn't satisfied with how my life was going to turn out to be in regards of like even if it will be through my career in which people say like my mic has very was set, so why did I transition? I've just ruined my life, all sorts of things. And even by going on through that, I had a lot of feelings of mutilation and going through just living as a boy when internally I felt like I shouldn't have been born as a boy. Yeah.
What was the point where you for the first time felt that?
When I was 9 years old, I was basically trying to wear my mom's clothes, take the clothes from her cupboard, go to my room, dress up, and whenever I used to look in the mirror, it was just like I felt something in me felt very different. Different in terms of I never felt this kind of satisfaction, internal satisfaction. And at that time I didn't have the words to put it, but I just looked into the mirror and I was like, I'm a girl, like I want to be a girl. And then I say that, but the very next thing is that I have a boy's body. So yeah, then I question that why am I not like why didn't I born as?
How old were you when you actually accepted your identity with yourself?
The feelings persisted from the age of 9 till like 20, 21. And as I turned 20, I started to come to terms with it. And by the age of 21 is when I finally like accepted myself. Although that acceptance was one part, but facing the exterior world was another. Yeah. And even after accepting that I'm a trans woman, then the internal conflict got even worse.
How come? Could you tell us what was the conflict?
Because throughout the years, I had built up this image of me. I built up this manly body, or what you say, a persona or a cricketer's persona, my life in terms of career and everything else. And also walking a certain way, talking a certain way.
Yeah.
I had to like bury all those feelings of it, put on exterior layers of what it means to be a guy or a masculine guy. Because again, I was in a boys' school and I played cricket, which is a very hyper masculine. So it can be pretty toxic as well. And just like going through those things, I had to build up this toughness that you call. But again, when there's no internal sync between your mind and your body, whatever layers that you build up can be really like, triggering. it. And after accepting that, the trigger points were just getting even worse because I was more aware that I'm going through all this and what am I doing?
Yeah. You know, Anaya, in Indian circles, or should I say some Indian circles, there is a narrative that, this whole thing of coming out as part of the LGBTQ plus community, it is seen as something which is just influenced by the West, right? They really don't understand that, the mindset of what a person goes through. They just simply feel that, okay, this is something we have, it's a trend we have picked up from the West. Did you also face such remarks when you started to come out to your people and then to the public?
I would say on a personal, yes, personal space of my smallest circle, no one really mentioned that because everyone was very educated about it. Although some people on my comment section say that this comes from the West, but in fact, all of this has been in our history, in our culture for many, many years, and it's widely accepted. Yeah. So, and after the Britishers came, that's when the Christianity, like conservative Christian values came in, and trans women or people who are queer were basically banned or looked down upon. And this has been happening for many years, and it's happening from the West. The transphobia, homophobia has been happening from the West.
So it's not the other way around.
Yes. But now, after colonization, people who aren't aware about it, aren't educated about it, they still tend to think that all this comes from West. Because now in the West, it's more accepted. Yeah. Although, as of now in the UK and US, it's going much worse for some reason.
You know, I was just going through a couple of your media interactions, and you spoke it openly about your medical transition. Yes, right. So could you walk us through how it all worked out for you? Whatever you're comfortable in talking about, what were the phases of medical transition that you went through?
So, I admit, start off by coming out at first. I was in UK. So, all of this led to me deciding that I'll have to give up cricket because I ended up hating that sport because, again, I had to be this fake person for everyone. Yeah. And I decided that I'm going to go to UK, I'm going to do my master's there, and just started there were knocking. So when I went there, I started socially coming out in socially transitioning in 2022. And for 1 year, I looked like that. And during the 2023 IBM season, that's when I came out to my parents saying that I'm trans woman and I want to transition. And I'd also made a playlist for them in which I had videos of what it means to be a trans person, what all the scientific reasons behind it, and also how much transitioning means for a trans person. Whether it be hormones, surgeries, and all those steps which are very risky for a trans.
Yeah. So could you elaborate on these steps that you went through first?
After coming out, I came back to India, and me and my family started going for counseling and psychiatrists. Okay. So while I was going through all that, they basically checked if I have any mental health issues or other like issues which is making me want to take this step. But after going through the assessments or tests, what do we call it, for like 2 months, 2.5 months, everything was clear. Like I didn't have any underlying issue, and I was basically diagnosed with having gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria means that there's a misalignment between your mind and your body. Like your soul is another gender, but your body is fixed. Yes. So after doing that, after getting that certificate stating that I have gender dysphoria, I was legally allowed to start hormones. And on 26 December 2023 is when I decided to start my hormone replacement therapy because it was my birthday as well. So I thought of it like a rebirth. Yes. Yeah. So as soon as I took the first testosterone blocker shot, I instantly felt like a huge relief. Huge relief in terms of I'm finally taking the first step towards inner peace.
Towards the transition.
Yes. And although the road ahead was going to be really hard, At that time, I felt really, really happy that I have done something fine. Instead of just bailing around and hoping that everything will be fine. So I've been on hormones. Since then, I've been on hormones for 1 year and 6 months now. And my transition has just been great. Although this has just been the first step, and I would like everyone to be a part of my transition. That's why I've been posting videos and transitioning publicly, because I want to let the public know, the people who aren't aware about this, to desensitize this topic for them. Because transitioning is a very complex procedure and it's very unique to each person.
Like you said, that you want to, make everybody part of this process, big part of this transition. A lot of people, like even us, we are not that educated about it. Like you just must said that on your birthday, you took start of this journey and you took the first this anti-testosterone shot, right?
Yes.
So what all changes? So just by blocking the testosterones, what kind of changes your body started to experience, and was that it, or there were multiple more layers of this medical transition?
So to start off with, there are testosterone blockers that we need to take, which are injections or pills or gel form. Okay, and you take that, and you also take estrogen pills. Okay. So basically, what it does is it suppresses your testosterone up to muscle of healing stage, and you align your estrogen more towards that level of the cisgender. And when you do that, your body, basically body, mind, everything starts going through second stage. Okay. So while you're going through second puberty, the same things which every girl experiences, even we go through. Okay. Oh, we made transition basically won't get periods. Okay, but besides cramps and fitting, whatever else there is, like let's say breast development, skin softening, the hair things out on your body, it all happens. It all happens from this.
And you experienced it after your
Yes, I started experiencing that 2 months into my hormonal procedure. Okay. And after going through all that, you also have to go through major head removal, like the cosmetic procedures which help you feel more aligned towards and genuine.
So you went through cosmetic procedures as well.
Yes. Okay.
Now what kind of impact all of this had, this whole transition, the kind of medication you went through, the cosmetic surgeries and everything, on you as a cricketer? Did it impact how you played the sport? Did it impact the kind of strength you used to have while playing that sport?
Definitely, because just after being on hormones for 4 months, I started noticing major difference in my body. My energy level is diminished to another level. My muscle recovery, or the way my body recovered, the way my body function changed. And I would play in the sport for 12 years now. Like if you're counting after transition as well, I would say 15. But it was just the recovery did in terms of, let's say, a ball hit me. Even doing that, my body took longer to recover. And when the ball hit me as well, I was bruising up more easy. And just going through all this, it just made me realize how similar we humans are and how hormones play a major factor in everything that. Along with that, I've also mentioned the scientific evidence which I have, has on the muscle oxygen levels, glucose, that's UV.
We will for sure talk about, like, I saw your Instagram post, so we will go there. But before that, in your answer, you all mentioned about this hormone therapy you underwent. So is this hormone therapy easily accessible in India, or are there some sort of challenges you have to go through?
So there's a procedure before you want to start hormone-based therapy. You basically have to go to a psychiatrist and then the mental health counseling and assessments. And once you get the certificate stating that you're generous with, that's when you're legally allowed to transition. Okay, after getting that certificate, you need to go to an endocrinologist. and they basically do your blood test, do your blood work, and give you dosage according to what your body functions.
Okay. In one of your interview I have here, you once mentioned that science hasn't fully caught up with the understanding the effect of hormone therapy on trans athletes. So, would you be comfortable explaining our audience through your experience what are these challenges?
Again, when a person transitions, people who aren't educated about it tend to think that they still have the male power or they still have those advantages or they're just socially transitioning to get into women's spaces.
Yeah.
But that's not the truth at all. And advanced science and everything that says, along with the evidence, is that after hormone therapy as well, everything aligns. Although for some cases it does. And that's what I had been proposing, which ICC had brought up as Webholder. They basically had guidelines stating that there can be a case-by-case analysis, and they had testosterone level margin set for people, yeah, if they're transition. So all of those, well, the rules were set up before, and then randomly just was one trans being played, and she didn't dominate. Daniel McDavid, she still got banned. So, is this about understanding what one trans woman is, understanding their gender, and the advantage level as well? Or is it just about transtopia?
Yeah. Evo and I only talk about trans athletes. Yeah. The people who go through this transition, basically. We tend to talk about the physical transformation. Like, even with our conversation for the last few minutes, we have been talking about what the body goes through, yeah, right? Little do we talk about, or should I say it is often overlooked, the mental battle, yeah, right? So what were the psychological battles you faced, you went through, while even when you started the transition?
So, yeah, again, transitioning isn't just physical. Yeah, it's very emotional and very psychological, I will say. Because we're basically changing your life. Yeah, you're changing how the world is going to perceive you. You're changing internally. And when you're going through hormone replacement therapy as well, you're not just losing muscle mass and all those physical advantages. You're also understanding how the female hormones work. Let's say we have the luteal phase and on the other.
Yes.
And all of that starts to happen. And it's very hard to understand it was, and took me a really long time to understand what all of it meant. But again, like I mentioned, all the layers that I built up living as a guy, trying to fit into society, I had to start to peel off those layers bit by bit. And it doesn't happen over. It takes a long time, and it still happens with me, where like my whole behavior patterns kick in, own instances kick in, and I'm learning and I'm growing from that. Yeah, because again, it's the acting part that I had to do all this time, and now I'm just existing. And when, let's say, there are some hard situations that I have to face, like, no, it can be very basic, like the way you talk or the way you walk or everything. The old instances can kick in, but again, the transitioning, you take those layers, you peel it brick by brick, and what it feels best for you, you have placed it.
Right. So, I was checking on Instagram, and a few days ago, I think last week, you made this.
One more thing I'd like to mention about McClassic. So, again, while I was going through hormone replacement therapy, it was basically like a second thing. And when you go through a second puberty, people tend to treat you as an adult. Yeah. But there are these phases when you're transitioning where you're actually growing up mentally all over and emotionally all over again. Okay, because your emotions change. Your outlook towards world changes. Like after going through this, I could understand the male side of it and the female side of me. And I'm still learning the female side more and more as I'm transitioning. It was just, I was acting like a kid all over again. Like, there are these phases when you're just like being cute, or I would say like when I watch my old videos after I came out publicly as well, I was still going through that phase and I'm still going through that. So phases basically are like you're growing from the age of 9 to like 15, then 15 to 18 and right, so on and so forth. So all of that tends to happen as well. It's also in the way you dress or way you think or way you act. Like we have those awkward teenage moments, right?
Right.
That happens all over again, but again we have more adult body. And that tends to put some people off as well.
Right. You know, I was on your Instagram. I was just when I was checking your Instagram, I found this post which I actually made just last week, that you participated in a 8-week research program in the UK that assessed your eligibility to compete in women's sports.
Yeah.
Could you explain what was the nature of the test, what were the parameters, and what was the result?
So while I was in UK, I reached out to Manchester University who were doing tests on transgender female athletes. And basically in that test, they were assessing how, after being on hormones for more than a year, how much your body changes.
Okay.
And it's not just from 1 year you've competed and that's it. That's the changes that you experience. It gets even more and more as you transition. So body tends to get more and more weaker again. It's not the same as it used to be for a guy's body.
Right.
So that main purpose of the test was calculating and collecting data in terms of performance levels. Let's say muscle mass, strength, power, lung capacity, oxygen levels, bilirubin. Oh, okay. And there are more things that are mentioned in the report, but I'm not an expert or a researcher. I just have an idea of it.
Right.
So they did all those tests on my body. And again, after going through all those tests, most of the things fit within the margin. They were on the same levels, or in some instances, my levels were lower than the decision. That's okay. And this was just from 1 year of hormone replacement that we like. Imagine what will happen after 3 years, 4 years.
So you're still undergoing the hormone replacement?
Yes, you have to do this for the rest of your life because your body doesn't naturally produce estrogen.
Okay.
And to have the full effects of hormones in terms of like breast development or your body changing, then again there's fat redistribution. Earlier my body was more in a V shape on its side, starting to get really curvier.
And so how often do you take these hormone?
Every day.
Every day? Yeah. So it's part of your life.
Yes, it's part of my life. I take estrogen pills every day and I take testosterone blockers every 3 months.
Every 3 months, okay. So when you put out this report, and I am, as much as I remember, the Instagram post, it was directed to BCCI and ICC. So have you received any response, any any sort of word from either of the two bodies?
Nothing.
So I'm sure you heard about this controversy regarding the LGB boxer Imani Khalif, where like her testosterone, due to her testosterone levels, it sort of made a lot of headlines. Do you think it did put fairness in women's sports under a big question mark?
Imani Khalif isn't a trans woman.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know who started this. She was born a woman. She's grown up as a woman. And I think she has a similar case that Duty Chand has. She naturally is a cisgender female, like Imani Khalif, and she produces more testosterone.
Yeah.
And after that, just because she doesn't fit the stereotypical female like appearance, people tend to think that they're trans women.
Yeah. But there was her body was producing more testosterone.
Yes.
The testosterone levels were high. Do you think it is fair for such women to compete in women's sports? Don't you think they would have an unfair advantage?
I'll counter that with this. Michael Phelps, his body is built for silk. In terms of wingspan or whatever other instances are there in this body, the parameters, they all surpass on the unfair advantage stage. So are you going to bank in a slip? Are you going to bring that question a slip? Why is it only the women that were targeted on this? Why not the men?
Right. So, you said that you take these estrogen pills daily and testosterone blockers every 3 months, right? So there is a chance, that there is a chance that maybe at some point, um, the testosterone levels in your body can go a little higher, or if you are on medication, then it will always, like, no matter when a test is conducted, the testosterone levels will constantly be below.
Yeah, so even for that, you need to do regular checkups, blood work, to make sure that the testosterone levels are under the female range, right? And like I said, even I scan those guidelines and up where a trans person has to prove every month that the testosterone levels are under this level. Okay. And even after 1 year of it, as you're playing, you still have to show that proof. And again, testosterone levels won't go up for women who have had this surgery.
Oh, okay.
Because then they won't have anything producing testosterone in their body. So they won't have to take any external medications to block that out.
Okay. And I know cricket was always a big part of your life, right?
Yeah.
Could you tell us what was your cricketing journey like before, before your transition, and how did it change after you came out to the court?
So my cricketing journey as a boy was headed on the right track. I was doing good for myself. I played for Mumbai 16, Pondicherry under 19. Yeah, and I was part of the Mumbai 23 class as well. I played the Coach PR Trophy. I did well for Pondicherry. And it was all going great for me in terms of how I was doing externally. But again, for all that, I just wasn't satisfied with myself.
And after you came out, where did your cricketing journey go?
While I was socially transitioning in the UK, I had given up hope on cricket. Because I knew that if I were to transition, cricket is gone for me. Yeah. And again, with me hating the sport as well, I just wasn't really doing it back on the team. But then I had a friend named Janak in UK. He basically told me that, like, you can come and play and like people will be fine about it. So I came out to the cricket club there. And most of them were very okay with it, like not against it. That even if they might not show it, there weren't any instances besides the two that I've already mentioned that I'm happy. And after having that social acceptance, just at that time, when the world, and after getting that, I was playing even better than I ever did.
Oh, wow.
Like mentally, I was that free that I don't have to hide myself or minimize myself or shrink myself just to put into these set. And after doing that, I felt some sort of hope that I can still play one day. And after going through hormone therapy as well, it just started making more and more sense how unfair it is for trans women who fit into the margins to not be allowed them to be just on the basis of transphobia or how the mass public hates, yeah. And just cause how mass public thinks we're gonna exclude this category. And BCCI and BCCI haven't even acknowledged our existence in that book. Right. And it's not just for trans women, it's the trans men as well. Yeah. And for trans men, okay, on a genetic value, I would say, on a genetic term, banning trans women was kind of making sense until you excluded the case by case part. Then it gets unfair for the trans women just because you want to minimize on backlash. Yeah, you'll just ridicule us for now. But for trans men, like, if you know Aryan Pasha, yeah, he's a trans man and he's a trans bodybuilder. If you clip a picture of Messi, I mean, looking at that man and thinking that he won't be allowed to play or compete in the men's category, it's just the critic accept this mate.
You know, Anna, we spoke about the challenges you faced, right? because of this transition from the public on social media and all that. What are the challenges you faced as a trans athlete when you tried to, reach out to any of these bodies, asking for opportunity for trans athletes?
Again, there's just been silence towards me. There hasn't been a single call, a single text, a single email from them. And I publicly wrote to them and I'm still waiting for their answer.
Right.
And I just hope that there can be some sort of inclusion and fairness considered at the same time.
Yeah. You know, you had to choose between two things. One is accepting your truth, and on the other side was this passion for cricket.
Yeah.
It must have been absolutely heartbreaking for you to choose one of the two, right? How did you navigate this process of making this choice? How many days did you debate in your head that, should I really sacrifice my cricket career for accepting my identity?
So while I was playing, it nearly became a life and death situation. Because my mental health got so worse that it came to a point when I was playing like selection matches, playing field, and I used to just think of killing myself or ending myself. Because I just can't live like this. I can't live this fake life or try to be this fake version in which everyone will applaud me for.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean anything. Even if I were to, at that point, even if I were to play India, I were to play IPL or all on the levels, or I were to achieve anything, it couldn't mean anything because it's all built on the foundation of lie. And I can't have that lie in my life just because people will applaud you for it. I'll have the external validation and acceptance. Wasn't the reason. It wasn't aligning with my soul or the purpose.
Even not to come across as insensitive, but I still I want to understand, like you mentioned, it's a big thing to say that there was a time where you felt like you want to literally kill yourself or end your life, right? Because you don't want to live this fake life. Did you have breakdowns when you had to sort of adjust to this male dressing room? Did you feel uncomfortable to be there? Did you feel out of place? Any incident if you remember?
Yeah, again, it was just like guys being guys and then changing in front of them. I just was feeling very shy about it. And then I didn't have any other option at that time. I did have breakdowns in the dressing room as well after going to bat and then coming back in this swimming medallion kind of one night. And worst case scenarios have also occurred where I've actually tried to take scissors or a knife to try to mutilate myself. Okay. So it has gone to that aspect and it just wasn't it for. Like,
How long did it take you to debate in your head and you were finally going ahead with it, like stopping the game and like saying goodbye to cricket and just accepting it? How long was that period?
I would say a year.
Okay.
And the breaking point for me was I was playing a selection match for Mumbai Under 23. Arjun Tendulkar was batting. This match was at PKC. And I was feeling at covers and he had a cover drive and I tried to stop the ball and I ended up faking this ball.
Okay.
And while all of this was happening, I was going through antidepressants, Mendon and Tamsi and all the things that I mentioned as after that happened, that was basically the breaking point there.
Okay.
Where I decided I can't do this anymore. Even if it were for me to give up on this future, this promising future ahead, Because I basically had what every boy would dream of having. Yeah. And again, like, it's never felt right. And finally taking that step, leaving cricket to transition, and then socially coming out and playing cricket. That was when I actually felt right.
But you haven't played competitive cricket for a while now.
Yes.
Are there days where you look back at your journey, at your cricketing journey, is there any regret you have that that you're not able to play competitive cricket?
There's no regret, there's just sadness. And even as of now, I see all my teammates playing, except Kaz, Mushid, Yashasi, and many others. In that journey, it just feels sad that I had to give up that aspect. I basically was put in a position by the sport board, the sports society, the sports society,
Yeah.
that I left with no other option but to do this. Either give up on sport or give up on myself.
Yeah. Your father, Mr. Sanjay Bangar, is a well-known figure at the Indian cricket fraternity. What role did he play in your personal and professional journey?
In terms of cricket, he's always been there for professionally as well. Like, he gave me the infrastructure and the support which I needed to play cricket for. When it came to transitioning, he's been very neutral or partially supportive, I would say. Okay, like, the support I got from him was just for hormone replacement therapy, but whatever else that comes along with transitioning, like, from your clothes, your hair, makeup, cosmetic, laser hair removal, and surgeries, it's all through me.
Right. Do you think that being Mr. Bangal's daughter sort of in any way helped you getting accepted by the whole fraternity?
While I was still being as a boy?
No, after transition.
No, nothing. And like I said, like, I'm having this background, and my father has played for the Indian cricket team. I'm a daughter of an Indian cricket player. I've decided to publicly transition, publicly put out scientific evidence, not just assumptions of the apes. And yet I'm still left with silence stuff.
Right.
If it's happening for me, what would it mean for people who don't have privileged backgrounds?
You said you have shared the dressing room with the likes of Sarfaraz Khan and Yashasvi Jaiswal, right? So when you came out to your friends, to your teammates, how did these people react to it?
So I told Mushil about this while I was still staying in the UK. And he was very shocked at first. But again, it took him a day or two just to accept it and support me or understand me. So him and Sarfaraz since then have been in touch with me.
Okay.
And then there for me, like, the same way that they always did, even before Tatish. Okay, me, him, and Mushil used to just, like, practice on cross Nella and Azari Menna and Madhu Hajim Khan, and just band all day, have these practice sessions together with my dad and their dad also being a part of it. Right. So, and just having that bond with them and still having that to this day, regardless of my conversation,
Yeah.
it means a lot. One day I had actually gone to meet my only to be teammates at the Trident. Mumbai Premier League was like on, and Mushir and basically Porek there. So as soon as I went in there, everyone was looking at me. Everyone was blown away. They were shocked because they saw this whole version of it. Oh, we are seeing this now. And Mushir just came in and in front of everyone. Might get shocked or amazed or laughing or whatever there is. Like it's those moments where you can actually be their boyfriend who is transitioning. That's what matters. Support isn't about like giving the world to them or helping them financially. It's just about doing these small things up to your best kid brings.
And I know social media, yeah, sort of gives you a platform to influence, inspire so many people. You have had like a private account for a long period of time, and I think you made your account public right before announcing the transition, right? Um, what kind of reactions you got on social media, and how did it affect you?
So I was always aware that when I decided to come out publicly, it is gonna reach to a lot of people. But what led me to publicly come out as well was not having that much support from my family at that point. And I basically wanted to fight for myself because I didn't have any support in terms of cricket after transition or financially connected to for the procedures that I wanted. Right. And after that point, I just decided, right, whatever the voice is, let them say, let them back. I'm gonna stand for myself. And that's when I decided to post the tape. And after that, like, the hate and everything, it didn't get to me, to be honest.
Do you check comments?
Like, just brush through it head on. And to be honest, it's entertaining.
Okay.
Because I know what mental stage or mental like perspective they're coming from. Because again, you have all these layers of transphobia who still within the society. Yeah, we just can't be like that. And I could just pity that. Not be good about it.
Do you also face issues like after your transition, did from the within the cricket fraternity, did you face issues like people passing these snide remarks or being inappropriate, having trying to have inappropriate conversations with you? Those kind of challenges did you also face?
Again, whatever I mentioned in the interviews, whether it be some people asking me to sleep with them or through social media, that's been pretty much it. What a guy plays, but transferring I kept one that's privileged as we go through dates.
In the recent first test match between India and England, we saw, because it was Pride Month, we saw that the wickets had these pride flags, right? And this came after the English board had banned trans athletes from participating in any level of women cricket, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that cricket boards are still struggling to find a balance while they want to support such initiatives and Pride Month and all of that? They really don't know how to put that into action.
I think they know how to put that into action. It's just they don't want to look bad while doing this. They want to look supportive, but not take those supportive steps. Okay. Because again, like it's very contradictory, and I'm not talking about, so UK Supreme Court had basically banned trans men as women. They were recognized as men now. And ACB, way before this ban happened, had actually banned trans women from elite cricket. And yet after all that, they still have the pride flags on stumps. Yeah. So it just shows that like your actions show that you're just performing allyship. You're not actually doing it. Like there are some brands who just want to look good for the trend.
Yeah.
But not actually take those steps, support where it actually needs something. Like there are companies like Potridge here in India who provide necessary transitioning post surgery, post coverage if you want to transition, and you can work in that company.
Okay. How do you think the Indian sports, Indian cricket fraternity or the Indian sports ecosystem can be more inclusive and supportive towards trans athletes?
Again, having scientific research backed up and fair dialogue and fair discussion and fair guidelines set up.
Yeah. While considering inclusiveness, what kind of guidelines we talk about?
So I would say bring back the case by case basis. First of all, acknowledge trans people's existence in the BCCI root book. Remember? Do that. And then have case by case basis for a trans women to compete in the female category as cricketers.
Right.
You need to keep your testosterone levels less than 5 nanomores because that's the highest for an average sister in the woman. You can keep that and maintain that for let's say 12 months or 24 months. And after doing that, you do tests on their body to measure their performance levels and strength levels, power levels, everything. And you measure all of that and then you put that into action. Right. Because now we're not crossing any unfair barrier here. We're just fitting into the barrier which a strongest female cricketer and a weakest female cricketer is setting. So if a trans woman like me or anyone else were to transition and they fit between that is on the same parameter, then why won't it be fair? Then it's just about what makes money for you and how the mass people are going to take up.
I think because what people sort of tend to confuse, and I would like to ask this question so that you can explain it in a more simpler and elaborate way. That where people think that even if you are blocking your testosterone levels, right, your body naturally is of a boy, is of a man, so you naturally have that unfair advantage when it comes to power and strength as compared to somebody who is originally or who is a female.
Yeah.
Right. Could you explain that there is a difference between that?
Again, I have lived experience after going to hormone therapy. I've played cricket as a boy. Now I'm playing cricket as a girl. The differences are major. And again, it can't be the same for all of the trans women because the way hormones work on is very unique.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not just talking about lived experience, I also have evidence backing with what I'm seeing. I think we have this notion on this stereotype that we'll always have that unfair advantage regardless of how researches are. Yeah. But now we actually have evidence to back it up. So whatever the points people bring up in terms of like having the previous advantages, they aren't there, they didn't mesh. Yeah. At some cases it gets even weaker than cisgender female actions. But again, just because they were born a certain way, you're gonna still judge them that badness.
So there was this question I wanted to ask. When you spoke about hormone therapy, whatever the changes you went through. Apart from that, do these hormones also have an effect on your voice, or did you go through some sort of procedures to change your voice as well?
So, for male transitioning into female, your voice wouldn't change unless you start transitioning before puberty kicks in.
Okay.
So after puberty kicks in, hormones don't reverse that. But to reverse that, you can just do voice training exercises which help you feminize it.
Okay. So did you also
Yes, I've done that myself.
Okay. What are these? I mean, could you educate us about it?
So I spoke to a voice speech expert.
Okay.
And basically, there are some singers that you might see who sing in both male and female.
Yeah.
Sushant Dekar.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the same things that they tell us to do. And over time, as you practice more and more, It just becomes naturally. Yeah.
How has, there are so many trans women influencers on social media. It's a very strong community. How did that community accept you, and what kind of relationship you have with them? Who are some top influencers from the trans, or like who are trans women, who are your friends, or like you collaborate with them? How that experience has been?
So since the day I came out, like LRD were now and me were really in touch. Like we talking to each other. She was really there for me in that hard case while I was in UK. After that, I started speaking to Sanat as well. Sanat and me are really close now, and even Shandi Ripalbrari. Yeah, like she's just been lovely towards me. Like we make content together. She's there for me no matter what. Like the sense of community and everything that is there, it's really strong.
Anayo, how are your parents now responding? What kind of conversations you have with them? Are they more accepting towards your transition, or are they still getting along with it, getting used to it?
I think let's keep getting used to it. And I think with Indian parents, it's more of about how will I be financially independent. Now that they see it happening through me being an influencer, I think it's starting to get better. But again, it takes time for people to accept this. Right.
Uh, moving ahead, moving on. Where do you see yourself as in the next 5-10 years? Do you see yourself playing professional cricket all over again, or would you want to establish yourself in the field of an influencer?
I'm thinking why not both? Okay. I see myself being in the entertainment industry and playing cricket at the same time, see professionally that way. Okay. And again, like I'm not the one in power here who can basically bring up guidelines. Yeah. Have inclusive spaces for us. I'm not BCCI's head or Rima. I certainly hope that they watch this and some steps need to be because like I think it's been too late now and people need to start speaking up instead of just staying quiet about it and talking about it behind closed doors.
Anaya, thank you so much. You more power to you, more power to your journey, and we do hope that BCCI does watch this interview, and maybe in the near future we see guidelines through which trans women are allowed to participate in this. Okay, thank you so much for that, EQS.